everything is just falling into place like I'm in a matrix.
To kick things off, we have one of my favorite fights in recent years between Stylebender himself and the greatest middleweight fighter of all time, Anderson the Spider Silva. At first, Adesanya wasn't too fond of the idea that he would have to go in there and fight his idol, especially now that Anderson is at the later stages of his career where he would be very close to retiring. However, it didn't seem long after those same comments seemed outdated, and both were interested to go in there and compete against one another. The two were billed as new school versus old school, and come fight night, the youthful and skillful Adesanya was just a bit too much for the aging legend. In the fight, it was very clear that Anderson had never faced somebody who would really apply his own strategies against him. He was always the guy that would go in there and take the outside and make the opponents take the bait and walk into shots on him. Having a taller, rangier, and younger fighter who would go in there and apply that same exact strategy onto him was already a bad start. From the opening of the fight, Adesanya was keen on making it a chess match he'd be in charge in, giving Anderson Silva many feints and making sure that he was out of harm's way. The first flurry of the fight came when Anderson Silva thought that Israel Adesanya was in range, but he fell for the trap of him seeming closer than he actually was. However, Anderson already took the bait, so he decided to chase down Adesanya. However, he was getting hit while doing so. During the fight, from what I perceived, Israel was not too keen on going in there and knocking out his idol. Rather, he wanted to have a brilliant showcase where both fighters would come out of it looking fairly good. Israel did a great job at chopping down Anderson's legs, evading nearly all of Anderson's head strikes, and in the end, both fighters embraced one another, and it was yet another great performance in which Israel Adesanya looked seemingly flawless. Coming in at number 4, we have a fight of the year candidate in Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum. It was a year where Israel Adesanya had to dig deep and fight through adversity. Being rocked by a Kelvin Gastelum high kick, we had never seen Adesanya be tested in that manner. The smooth southpaw Kelvin Gastelum was a very tricky puzzle to solve, as he was very nonchalant and barely telegraphed his shots, coming in and out of range without Israel Adesanya getting a good read on him early on. That said, Israel was still the fighter who was landing the crisper and more consistent shots out of the two. Both fighters were seemingly cancelling each other's success out each round. One round would go to Kelvin, then the following round, Israel would win. But it always felt like Kelvin was the one that had to come and win the rounds. Adesanya kept being a very sharp striker. In the 4th round, after recovering from that head kick Kelvin landed, Adesanya picked up the pace and started to fight in the pocket a lot more. He was also able to establish great damage to the body of Kelvin, subsequently slowing him down. In the 5th round, we saw one of the strongest finishes in UFC history. Israel was able to knock Kelvin down 3 separate times. And he was also able to put him in 2 tight submissions. The fight was close, but Adesanya was clearly the more effective fighter out of the two, and becoming the new UFC interim middleweight champion. The UFC debut of Israel Adesanya was a very relaxed, dominating performance. His opponent, the grappler Rob Wilkinson, made sure that he would be the one to test Adesanya's grappling skills. Instantly from the opening of the fight, Adesanya was able to set the distance once again and immediately landed a beautiful left straight that busted the nose of Wilkinson. Wanting no part in that, he quickly shot him for a takedown, but Adesanya was defending very well. After continuously trying to take down Adesanya, at the closing seconds of the first round, he was able to briefly put Adesanya on his back, which only lasted for a couple of moments before Adesanya got back up and the round came to an end. Now in the second round, Adesanya wasted no time and he completely shot down whatever hope Wilkinson had. When Wilkinson shot him for a desperate takedown that easily got denied, the end was very near, because it was very clear that Wilkinson was ready to be done with the fight, as his body language showed no signs of fighting back. Adesanya then slowly started to break down his opponent piece by piece, evading his shots and then immediately making him pay, piling up the offense, and Wilkinson just had enough and the ref stepped in. In this performance, Adesanya showed great grappling defense and a supreme level striking, which just promised a very bright future in the UFC.
I know you like my swagger. You know I'm strapped when I come through. girl. You're skinny, bro. Hey, you better lift some weights, man. You're skinny as hell. I'm not worried about you. I'm an All-American wrestler.
I might be the ugliest,
I'm a
but I'll
dunk you
whoop
on
your
your
ass
head
any
for...
day.
This performance would have been Adesanya's finest if it wasn't for the #1 spot in this video. Going into this fight, Brunson was the first legit test in Adesanya's career, as Brunson was a pretty established fighter in the division who was also a pretty good grappler. At the time, people were still not sold on Adesanya as they were calling him just another hype train, and come fight night however, Adesanya made sure the critics would eat their words. When fighting Brunson, who is a pretty notorious rusher, Adesanya did well at keeping his distance and circling away from him, and would avoid getting tied up too often. Landing shots on the outside made Brunson pretty desperate as well. After not finding any success with his grappling, Brunson got too desperate and rushed himself into a big knee that was the beginning of the end. In typical Adesanya fashion, he did not rush a thing, and he would calmly go in there and chop Brunson down, completely destroying him in the process and securing himself a knockout victory. With this victory, Adesanya became a man people could not ignore any longer.
Never heard of this guy. Makes him dangerous at the same time, but
if I was Israel and Israel was to fight me,
he should just keep his mouth shut and let me sell the fight.
I would fear me.
Here goes an honorable mention for Adesanya's flawless performance against Italy's own Marvin Vettori. Really, most of Adesanya's fights have been nothing but spectacular displays of skill, and it was no different against the young Vettori. Also, Adesanya said that he wasn't too impressed with his debut performance, so he really wanted to outdo himself in his second UFC outing, and he did just that, landing creative counter kicks, sharp elbows, and was dodging shots like they were coming at him in slow motion. And really what this performance showed was a fighter who was on a completely different level of striking, and the middleweight division was put on notice. Now with the honorable mentions out of the way, let us take a closer look at the #1 moment in Israel Adesanya's UFC career. And obviously it has to be his world title win over Robert Whittaker in Australia, unifying his interim middleweight championship with the undisputed title and leaving no questions as to who is the best UFC middleweight on the planet. Going into the fight against a very explosive Robert Whittaker, early on in the fight it really came down to not going in there and being first. Adesanya employed a game plan where he was just waiting and seeing what Robert Whittaker was all about. What could he really do in there? And Robert, being a very explosive fighter, his lead left hook as he was jumping in to close the distance seemed to be his primary weapon, which was a pretty good weapon to begin with. However, in these 5 rounds, it seems to be very hard for Adesanya, as smart as he is, to not figure that move out and counter his adversary. And that is exactly what happened at the end of the first round, catching Robert Whittaker with a beautiful hook that sent him flat on his back, and if Adesanya was given a couple more seconds, I'm pretty sure the match would have been over and done with right then and there. However, the second round came along and Robert Whittaker did not seem like he recovered as he was still breathing a bit heavy, and Adesanya just simply went in there and finished the job. And when you look back at the fight, really Adesanya was seemingly always in control of the fight, dodging most of Whittaker's shots and just waiting for the right opening to counter. And for the people that said Adesanya had no real knockout power, he proved them otherwise by knocking out a man who went 2 rounds with Yoel Romero, a powerhouse in the middleweight division. And with these moments concluded, we are coming to the end of the video where we took a look at Adesanya's Matrix-like performances inside the UFC's octagon. Did I leave any moments out of the video? Be sure to write them down in the comment section down below. And as for the future, I'm fairly certain that there are many more Matrix-like moments to come in Adesanya's career, so we can all look forward to that.